Welcome everyone, Costin here with the list of my top 5 recommended fanfictions for Harry Potter. I like to read fanfiction, I like to read from a bunch of authors, and I like to read for a bunch of universes. Harry Potter though has a lot of fanfiction, and it has probably some of the best stories I've read on fanfiction.net and Harry Potter fanfiction, because there is a dedicated Harry Potter fanfiction site because there's so much stories for it. It should be pointed out there's a lot of crappy stories when it comes to fanfiction, and a lot of stuff that gets repeated in a lot of stories, like Draco, for instance, or Harry Hermione, or Draco Hermione, or Blaise Sabini, for instance. Anyway, these are the stories that I've enjoyed the most, and I'll explain why. I won't get into any great detail about it, because A, these stories are generally quite long, B, obviously, if you're spoiling a story before you have even had a chance to read them, then you're kind of wasting your time. Anyway, and number 5, it's The Best Revenge, written by Arsenault de Blasneville on fanfiction.net. And she's written a bunch of stories. Some of my favorite stories are Victory at Ostagar, which is an alternative universe in Dragon Age Origins where the army of Ferelden won at Ostagar, though Duncan died, the Great Wardens were dead, but still, fairly interesting alternate universe, and it's a Loghain-centric story, and I'm a big Loghain fan. Still, she wrote The Best Revenge, which is a story about Snape adopting Harry. There's actually 2 stories in this. There's a continuation, right, The Time of the Basilisk, but let me put it like this, I enjoy the concept. I think the concept was a great deal of fun. I think Snape is one of the better characters. And Harry is the kind of characters a lot of writers, fanfiction writers, mold to their desire. Not so much with the other characters, but Harry especially. And that was an interesting road to take by an author. I mean, a lot of authors have done this, but I think this story is very well written. It tries and makes things logical in a nonsensical universe, because Harry Potter is nonsensical, and the series written by Rowling is nonsensical, illogical, inconsistent. But the author tries to do a good job, and, she does one. And the story is overall fairly enjoyable because of that. So that's number 5. And number 4, it's Hit the Ground Running. And this one is set in either first or second year, I don't remember exactly. Anyway, early on, actually it's in the first year, my bad, where the Horcrux in Harry's head, the piece of Voldemort's soul in Harry's head, wakes up, and then you have hilarity ensuing. It's really interesting, the conversations between Voldemort and Harry, the paths taken by Harry and Voldemort, the friendship that develops between Voldemort and Harry, or that piece of Voldemort's soul in Harry's head, which eventually gets destroyed, but he then gets the piece from the diary, Tom Riddle's diary, inside his brain, and yeah, things develop. It was supposed to be a series, but it wasn't finished as a series, but the first book, if you want to call it that, was finished, and Hit the Ground Running is quite interesting. I imagine there's some people that are trying to finish it, but I don't know. Anyway, the original author has basically abandoned the series, but he developed a very good starting point for others to use. So that's number 4. And number 3, well, it's Hogwarts Battle School. Now, this is not a finished book or a finished novel, and the author is slow to update, though there's a lot of chapters to read. And this one, as you might imagine, Hogwarts becomes a battle school. Dumbledore dies, or is presumed dead. Anyway, I'll talk about it. I won't say anything more than that. Anyway, Dumbledore is presumed dead, so Snape takes over Hogwarts and turns it into a militaristic school where kids are taught to fight, and they're basically trained as a police force. There's a lot of strict measures. There's fighting between various classes, various people. It's not so much on house level, though houses still matter, but individuals matter as well. It's not you don't just care about your house, you also care as doing as best as you can yourself. It's a Harry and Hermione story, by the way. The Hit the Ground Running or anything like that, they're not really romantic. This one is moving in that direction. It's not finished, but I'm very certain that it's moving in that direction of Harry, Hermione. Though there's other romances blossoming as well in this. And it's Harry being a Slytherin as well. Though he's not friends with Draco Malfoy, he is a friend with Tracy Davis, who is a character that didn't have a lot of to herself in the books. So fanfiction authors use her when they're writing Slytherin, and they use Blaise Zabini as well. So Harry's friends with those two. And there's a huge rivalry with Ron Weasley as well, and rivalry with Hermione, and rivalry with Draco. Is quite a fun read, and an interesting take on the whole thing, because the purpose of the school is to train a police force that can tackle the return of Voldemort. There's a lot of nuance, like all the stories that I mentioned, there's nuance, complexity, great characters, you know, and certain interesting moral takes on characters that Rowling made pure evil. So that's enjoyable. Actually, all the stories on this list are like that, because those are the kind of stories that I love. Okay, so that's number 3. And number 2, and well, I should point out this is a story that I'm a beta reader for, and I've actually written quite a bit in certain chapters. Like after chapter 30, I wrote some of the political stuff. But the story is called With Strength of Steel Wings. This is my number 2. And I would not have become a beta reader if I didn't think it was an interesting story from the beginning. The concepts, especially in this story, are very interesting. Like, the author likes to do grandiose things with magic and take magic into some weird way. So I'm not a big fan of that. But what I like is the grounded stuff in the story. So the notion is that Harry is abandoned by the Dursleys. He gets picked up by an old man who adopts him in a way. And it turns out that this old man is part of a secret organization that's trying to find information about the magic world. And he gets Harry, you know, a bit convenient anyway, but that's what happens. And Harry gets raised by this guy from a fairly early age. The Dursleys don't have any role in this. Anyway, and this is about, you know, obviously it's Harry being Slytherin, and it's Harry being friends with Blaise Zabini and Draco, and Hermione, a romance with Hermione as well. You know, that's great. You know, in fact, even Rowling herself said that she probably would have done Harry-Hermione as the canon romance, but for her, Hermione-Ron was wish fulfillment. Now, that's not surprising, considering that Hermione's based on herself, and Ron is based on what was her boyfriend when she was younger, much younger. So, yeah, there you go. Wish fulfillment right there. But anyway, so this is Harry-Hermione. It takes a while to develop. Harry has special powers. That's one of the aspects I don't care for that much, but I like the concepts. I like the idea of tackling the idea of revealing the magical world to the muggles and the repercussions for that. It's set much later in terms of year than the canon is, like 2010, 2014, all of that stuff. Give or take 2013, 2014, 2015. A specific date isn't put forward, and probably should actually help the writer decide on that, have a discussion on that subject. It gets updated slowly, just a point, like, you know, Hogwarts Battle School gets updated slowly as well, but this one also gets updated very slowly. But it's fairly enjoyable, even if it's probably not the best written out of the books I've, or the fan fictions I've mentioned already. It has some very interesting concepts, and it goes in places that other fanfiction stories don't go to. The whole thing with the muggles and the wizards and the intertwined world and revealing magic to the wizards, that's something you don't see in a lot of fanfictions. In fact, it's very fucking rare to actually see that. Imagine if we discovered that there's a hidden magical world with people that kidnap children or wipe the memories of people that find out about them, and soul-sucking demons working for them. Yeah, imagine how that would go down for people. And there's, I helped, in terms of my contribution with this, I helped bring about some discussion about modern-day politics with Russia, the US, the UK, France, all of that, and, you know, how each individual country would react. That's my personal contribution, but that's very late into the story. It's fairly interesting. Like, as I said, I wouldn't have gotten involved in the story if I didn't think that it was very interesting from the start. Anyway, and then finally, my number one story, and you know, you'll find links for all of these stories in the description of this video. But my number one story is Legacies, Harry Potter Legacies. This is on Harry Potter Fanfiction. And Legacies isn't a single story. There's multiple stories. This is a very long series of long fan fictions. There's Legacy the Solidus Charm, for instance. That's where it all kicks off. And then you've the Halo of Life, the Sword of Gryffindor, the Grim, and it continues developing. Primarily, it's a Harry Hermione fanfiction, romance between the two of them, but it tackles a lot more stuff. Magic is more powerful, Harry is more powerful, and it's a bit of a bromance, if you want to call it that, between Harry and Draco working together and against each other. There's politicking in the Ministry of Magic. There with the new Prime Minister who's actually competent, but very different than what you'd expect. Like, she manipulates Harry. It's Diggory's wife, actually. And she manipulates Harry into, trying to gain control of Harry after Harry gains control of a lot of power. The Sword of Gryffindor. Harry gains the Sword of Gryffindor, gains a lot of power through the Sword of Gryffindor, and then he becomes a danger. He's perceived as a danger. There's a lot of people trying to manipulate and control Harry, but he's very powerful and eventually comes into his own. And things are very interesting. Like, this is my favorite, not just Harry Potter fan fiction series, but my favorite fan fiction series of all time, really. There's a lot of love and care and a lot of effort. It's not finished yet. Like, the author abandoned it after about 5 individual fan fiction stories, each of them which was pretty long. So, he abandoned after that, but he took the story of Harry Potter in a very interesting direction. This was released actually before, I believe, Book 6 and Book 7. And Book 6 and 7 just paled in comparison to the quality of this series. I mean, yes, it's still a fan fiction story, but the concepts, the overall story, the grim, dark moral complexities and all of that stuff, that's what makes it all interesting. By the way, Dumbledore doesn't die like a fucking loser just to save Draco Malfoy in this. And that's interesting. There's a lot of going for this story, a lot of interesting magical powers and a lot of interesting characters and character developments here between the main characters, Harry, Hermione, and Draco. So that's all well and good. Well, hope this list helped people in reading some interesting stories. And I might do some more fanfictions videos if people are interested in that. Because I actually read a lot more fanfiction these days than I read original stories. Because, I'm very much interested in specific series. And it's nice to see authors do something good with those series. And it's also especially interesting to see authors take a game that had a horrible story like Mass Effect 3, for instance, and actually do an extraordinary job with the story from that game, in terms of a novelization, for instance, or tell alternate stories inside that universe. So anyway, Costin here on Serious Gaming, signing out.